Good morning. It is Thursday, the 14th of July. We continue the story in the book of Joshua, chapter 3, verses 14 to chapter 4, verse 7. And in the story, the Israelites now physically cross the river Jordan. We are told that the river is in flood stage because it is harvest season. And the archaeologists and scholars tell us that that would have been in the months of April and May. That was harvest season in that part of the world. So it was approximately that time. The river is in flood because the snows would be melting. So the harvest comes in springtime. Remember, this is a Mediterranean climate, and so the crops are grown during winter. Same as would be really down in the Cape area of South Africa. And again, we are told that the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant go to the river, it stops flowing, they stand in the middle of the river. And there are two things I want to share about that, and perhaps we can conclude with that. Number one, the priests carry the Ark and they stand in the middle of the river. The water is piled up. You would imagine that it piles up there immediately next to them. But in fact, we are told in verse 16 of Joshua 3 that the waters pile up a considerable distance, we are told, a considerable distance further up the river at a town called Adam. And obviously, the archaeologists have a very good idea where this fjord was, where they crossed, near the town of Jericho. And then they also know where the ruins of a town called Adam are, and it's some 20 miles, which is what, about 40 odd kilometers further up the river. Now we might think, well, there's no miracle here. It was a landslide, and it dammed the river temporarily, and the Israelites used the opportunity to cross. But it is in every respect a miracle, because it happened at precisely the time God wanted it to happen. In other words, God made it happen, and the timing was phenomenal. If it's some 40 kilometers up the river, it's going to take time for the water that was now on the downside of the dam to continue flowing. It would lose its momentum and power quite quickly, but there's still a huge volume of water in some 40 kilometers of riverbed in flood. It would take a while for that water to stop flowing. And the fact that it all happened at precisely the time that God had said to Joshua, cross now, makes it a miracle. And I want to pause there and say, in our lives, we pray for miracles, and God sometimes uses the very mundane and the ordinary. He uses nature, or what we might call a simple coincidence. But the fact is, it's not really a coincidence. It's what I would term and others call a God incidence. God made it happen at the right time to your benefit. So don't think it's going to be something that is absolutely remarkable and Hollywood would want to make a movie about it. God will use the mundane. The main thing is God is always with you. God is always going to help you. God is caring for you, and God is planning well in advance. I don't know how much time it takes for water to actually stop flowing down a 40-kilometer stretch of riverbed in flood for the Israelites to walk across on dry ground. But God knows all that timing. God was planning many hours, if not a whole day in advance. Let God plan a whole day or more in advance in your life. Let him be God. Don't try and tell him what he needs to do just to impress you. Then the other thing is that the Ark of the Covenant stands in the middle of the river. And obviously the middle of the river really marks the boundary. So we say that God did set foot first in the promised land ahead of his people. But God stays in the middle of the river. God put himself in what was potentially the most dangerous place while the people crossed. And they were able to cross all in one day, because we are told that very night they camped at a place called Gilgal. And 12 selected men had to carry nice river stones out of the riverbed and make a monument to what God had done for them. But there was God represented by the ark in the middle of the river. God put himself in the most dangerous position and remained there until his people had crossed. Is that not just this incredibly beautiful picture of what God does for himself? He's with us and plans ahead, and he puts himself in danger so that we can be safe and cross ahead. That's an incredible picture. And I want to stop at this point, but just think about that. God plans ahead in your life so that the coincidences or the God incidences can happen, and God puts himself in the place of danger while he lets you cross safely to the other side. Something to think about. Folks, we'll chat again tomorrow. God bless.